When we look at the three domains of living things on the tree of life, the bacteria, the archaea, and the eukarya, and we think about how many of those meet our definition for microbes, we can see that microbes make up the majority of organisms on this planet. And inside the category of microbes, it's the prokaryotic microbes that make up most. Prokaryotes, therefore, single-celled organisms with no organelles in them, vastly outnumber eukaryotes on our planet. So the question is, just how many prokaryotic cells are there on planet Earth? The number is really astounding. The most current estimate is that there is approximately 1 nonillion prokaryotic cells. Now, if you're not aware of what a nonillion is, neither was I, it's about 10 to the 30th cells. The prokaryotic organisms that live on planet Earth make up about half of all of the biomass on the planet. I mean, that is really remarkable. That is an astounding number of organisms. You might also ask, how many different species of microbes are there across the different domains? And the answer to that question is we don't really know. We have not discovered most of the microbial life that lives on this planet. There are lots and lots of efforts underway to locate and identify and characterize many, many more microbes that live in all of the corners of our world. But as climate change progresses, we know that we're losing species every single day to extinction. The current estimate is that there are billions to trillions of different species of bacteria and archaea on our planet. And in order for there to be that many species, it tells us something. It tells us that these organisms, these prokaryotic organisms, must be living in places where other types of life simply can't survive. One of the most interesting facts about microbial life is that it's able to take advantage of almost limitless numbers of habitats on our planet. And in order to do that, in order to survive in so many different niches in our environment, those organisms have to have a very diverse ability to metabolize. They must have the ability to use metabolic pathways that you and I can't use. We talked about how different types of organisms use different energy sources. And if you recall, the bacteria and the archaea have a very diverse list of energy sources available to them: organic, inorganic, and even sunlight. It's that kind of metabolic diversity that allows microbes to live in so many different environments. Something else that we need to understand is that microbes are absolutely critical to our health as human beings. Every once in a while, I get asked, why is it important to study microbiology? And my first answer is that microbes are critical to human health. This surprises a lot of people because a lot of people have a limited understanding of the role of microbes and look at them primarily as pathogens. In reality, the vast, vast majority of microbes are not pathogenic. They don't cause disease, and in fact, they help keep us healthy. So, What kind of things do microbes impact in terms of human health? I've listed a couple of them here. Microbes help our immune systems function optimally. They help train our immune system, and by that I mean they help to teach our immune system what real pathogens look like. They help in preventing a number of allergies and even things like asthma. They help to provide a barrier in our bodies to pathogens entering and causing disease. And they help in preventing pathogens from invading tissues and causing disease. Microbes have a critical role in the normal, healthy functioning of the human immune system. Microbes also help promote healthy digestion, and I've listed some of the ways they do that here. Some of our most recent research into the role of microbes in human health involves the role of microbes in obesity, specifically in preventing obesity. This particular role has not been fully explained yet, but research is showing us that people who are obese tend to have a limited number of microbes living in their digestive system, whereas people who are at a healthy weight tend to have a much more diverse community of microbes living inside their intestine. We're starting to understand that the microbes that live in the human body even play a role in our mental health. We know that they modulate or control some of the ways that our nervous system functions. In fact, there's some evidence now that a healthy microbial community can help prevent the development of autism in children. Again, this role has not been explained yet in any detail, but there is some evidence that the microbial community inside a person can actually impact whether or not they develop autism as a child. The role of microbes in human health is only expanding in terms of our understanding. A lot of money is being spent right now in research laboratories trying to help us understand exactly what microbes are involved in human health and how we might supplement or help improve the microbial community inside people who are not healthy. But like I said, most people don't understand microbes this way. In fact, most people have sort of an innate fear of microbes. Most people refer to microbes as germs, and they associate germs with disease. The truth of the matter is that the vast majority of microbial organisms that we encounter are either good for us or don't harm us at all. Let me say that again, because that's a really important concept. The vast majority, somewhere in the order of 95% of the microbes that we encounter in everyday life, either don't bother us at all or are actually important to us for maintaining health. We need to change the way we think about microbes and recognize that only a very small percentage of them are dangerous to us. The current estimate is that somewhere between 1 and 5% of the microbes that we encounter are pathogens and can cause disease. The most common pathogens are bacteria and viral particles. It just happens that the fungi and the protozoa and other eukaryotic microbes just don't cause as much disease in us. Now, There are some fungi that are pathogens. There are some protozoa that are pathogens. But generally speaking, they are just not the cause of as much disease as bacteria and viruses are. Something else that you need to know is this. There are, as of now, no known archaea that cause disease in humans. We are not aware of a single species of archaea that is capable of causing disease in humans. Over the past couple of decades, this fear that people have of microbes has become more and more apparent, particularly in the offerings of certain products. Now, we're in the middle of a pandemic, so it's understandable that things like hand sanitizer and disinfecting wipes have become very, very popular. I can't remember a time when people talk so much about hand washing, for example, and how to correctly use hand sanitizer. I cannot recall a time in history when people were learning so much about carefully controlling their exposure to microbes. But again, that's due to the pandemic. Before the pandemic began, it was obvious that people were still thinking about microbes as being dangerous to them. And you could see that in products. The fact that you can buy a hand sanitizer, and the fact that so many people carried hand sanitizer with them and felt the need to use hand sanitizer during the day was really indicative to us that people felt like the microbes that were in their world were dangerous to them. We started to see things like children's toys being made with antimicrobial chemicals in the plastic. If you go to a Target or a Walmart and you walk down the toy aisle, particularly the toys that are offered for infants and very young children, most of the plastics now have antimicrobial compounds impregnated in them. And again, the idea, I guess, is that since baby might chew on these toys, since baby's handling these toys and maybe putting them in his mouth, that somehow we need to make sure that there are absolutely no microbes on those toys. And of course, this is not the right way to think. Baby needs to build up a certain number of microbes inside his body. And the way that infants and young children do that is by putting everything in their mouth. Even things like school age children's toys and supplies are now treated with antimicrobial compounds. This is a package that I saw in an office supply store. This is a pair of scissors that are intended for a child to use. These are safety scissors, and they are treated with, again, with an antimicrobial compound in the plastic. Again, suggesting that we wouldn't want a school-age child to touch a pair of scissors without this level of protection because it might have a germ on it. In ordinary times, outside of a pandemic, that's the wrong way to think. The truth is that 95% of the microbes that might be on that pair of scissors are not harmful to that child. So, we have a term that we need to be familiar with called the microbiome. This is a term that you're hearing more and more in common everyday speech as people become more and more aware of the fact that there are microbes that they need in their body to help keep them healthy. So when you translate that word microbiome, it's the living body of microbes. And we define it to mean the collection of all of the microbes that live on us, on the surface of our body, and in us. And of course, when I say our body, I really mean the body of all organisms, because while humans have their microbiome, all other types of organisms, at least multicellular organisms, also have their own microbiome. Dogs have a microbiome, cats have a microbiome, cows and sheep and horses, you name it, if it's an organism that is composed of many, many cells, if it's a eukaryotic multicellular organism, it has microbes both on its surface and inside of it. And those microbes are necessary for good health. So we are only just starting to understand which microbes are part of the human microbiome, but we're learning more and more every day. One of the things that has become very apparent through this kind of research is that our microbiome is complex. In fact, it changes throughout the life of an organism, and it is quite sensitive to the way we live. So, our diet can impact the health of our microbiome. If we're eating low quality food, in other words, food that has a poor nutritional profile, our microbiome is going to be less healthy as a result. If we live with too much stress, particularly chronic, ongoing stress, our microbiome is not going to be very healthy. Smoking is detrimental to the microbiome, and that includes cigarette smoking and other types of smoking. So as cannabis becomes more and more available in our society, as the laws around its use are relaxed, it's important to remember that while cannabis itself may not be particularly harmful to us, smoking cannabis is. Inhaling smoke is not a good thing. It's not good for your microbiome. A lack of exercise is also problematic for the microbiome, as is a lack of sleep. And of course, many, many people in our society, particularly in your age group, don't tend to get as much sleep as they should. Finally, we're starting to understand that there is a genetic component to the health of the microbiome. There are people that have a certain combination of genes in their DNA that makes it more difficult for them to maintain a nice, healthy community of microbes in and on their body. One of the most interesting developments around our growing understanding of the human microbiome has been the marketing of probiotic products. Now, if you're not familiar with that term, probiotic is a compound that is supposed to be supportive of a healthy microbiome. What's interesting to me as a scientist is that many people view this probiotic, these products, as being the only way for a person to improve the health of their microbiome. And of course, nothing could be farther from the truth. As we just said, improving our lifestyle can help improve the health of our microbiome, but also consuming the right diet. There are lots and lots of natural foods that are covered in microbes, fruits and vegetables primarily, also things like nuts and seeds. And by including these healthy natural foods in our diet, we can also improve our microbiome. You don't have to, in other words, buy an expensive probiotic product as your first choice for maintaining the health of your microbiome. So what kind of microbes live in and on the human body? Quite a few of them are bacteria. There are also a number of archaea that live on us and in us. There are also eukaryotic microbes, particularly members of the fungal group. And we're starting to understand that there are viral particles that are also part of our natural microbiome. So basically, all of the microbes play a part in our microbiome. And we're only, again, just now starting to learn exactly which species of bacteria, which species of archaea, which eukaryotic organisms, which viruses are important in the human body. It's estimated that there are about 100 trillion microbes on and in your body at any one time. Now, that's a big number, but it's a number that's kind of hard to wrap your head around. So for comparison, there are about 37 trillion cells in your body, human cells. So that means that there are 2 to 3 times as many microbial cells in your body as there are human cells in your body. Imagine that. You are more microbe than you are human. Now, as we start to talk about the role that microbes play in human health, there's a couple of other terms we need to introduce. The first is this word planktonic. A planktonic microbe is a individual free living microbe. In other words, one cell that is living by itself in the environment. It's free living. It's not attached to anything. It's not part of a larger group. It's planktonic. Now compare that to the term biofilm. By definition, a biofilm is a community of microbes. They are living together, and what holds them together is a sticky, sticky film that builds up on a surface somewhere. Now, that surface might be a living surface, like, say, the skin, or a non-living surface, like, say, a rock out in the middle of a stream, or a leaf on a bush or a tree. Biofilm is composed of a lot of different materials, but what's most interesting inside biofilm is what is referred to as EPS. EPS stands for extracellular polymeric substances. These are compounds that you don't see in many other locations in nature. They're not inside the microbe, they are outside of the microbe. They're the sticky film that holds all those cells together. What makes EPS so interesting to science is that it's a really tough material. It's hard to remove it. It's also hard for drugs and other compounds to penetrate biofilm. So when a biofilm forms on a surface, it's kind of there to stay. It's not going to be easily or readily removed. Now, where do we see biofilm? Remember, our microbiome, our collection of microbes that live on us and in us, they can be found on our surfaces, and they can also be found internally in certain parts of our body. What holds much of our microbiome in place is biofilm. You have biofilm, for example, all over your skin. You have biofilm on the surface of your teeth. Sometimes biofilm grows on implants, things like metal plates that might be on a broken bone, or dental implants, the kinds of things that get placed into the body at surgery during a surgical repair. We find biofilms on catheters that are placed, for example, in the urinary bladder to help someone urinate. Pacemakers sometimes develop biofilms on them. Um, Out in the environment, in the natural world, biofilm is on any and all surfaces. I mentioned rocks in the river, on the bark of trees, on the surface of leaves, on the shells that cover shellfish and certain kinds of insects. Microbes are everywhere. And what helps microbes adhere to surfaces is biofilm. Now, the thing to remember about biofilm is that it can be both good and bad, in the sense that sometimes biofilm contains beneficial microbes, the microbes that normally live there and help keep the organism healthy. But other times biofilms are bad, in that pathogens can be in biofilm, and pathogens cause disease. So biofilms are very resistant. They're resistant to being removed physically, and they're resistant to chemicals like antibiotics. So one of the examples I like to use is your teeth. You have biofilm on your teeth. Now, we all know that really great sensation of leaving the dentist office and having our teeth be nice and clean. You run your tongue over the surface of your teeth and they just feel so smooth and so clean. When you go home, when you brush your newly cleaned teeth, your toothbrush almost squeaks as it goes over the surface of the cleaned teeth. You would think at that moment that all the biofilm has been removed from your teeth. But in reality, it's still there. Okay, the dental cleaning has removed plaque from your teeth, and it has also removed planktonic bacteria, the individual free-living bacteria that are on your teeth. But there's still biofilm on your teeth with good, important microbes in it that help keep your mouth healthy. So yes, there's good biofilm and there's bad biofilm. Biofilm is important, therefore, medically speaking. We want to prevent the development of bad biofilm. I mentioned that biofilm can grow on orthopedic implants and pacemakers and catheters. If it's a bad biofilm, if it's a biofilm that has allowed the growth of pathogenic microbes, it's problematic. And unfortunately, because it's hard for antibiotics to penetrate that type of biofilm, it often means that the implant has to be removed to keep the patient safe. Biofilms are important in our environment as well. Um, Remember, there are good and bad biofilms, and they are naturally occurring. They need to be there in many cases. We don't want to remove them, but some are involved in disease. When planktonic bacteria, when planktonic bacteria are involved in the development of disease, these are the kinds of infections that tend to be very acute. And by that I mean they tend to come on very rapidly. They tend to have a rapid course in terms of how long the infection lasts, and then they resolve one way or the other. Either the person or the organism recovers or succumbs. Biofilms are different. When a bad biofilm is growing, when there is a biofilm in the body that has pathogenic microbes in it, these are the infections that tend to be more chronic. Remember, it's really hard to get an antibiotic, for example, through a biofilm. So these are the infections that tend to sort of last, maybe at low levels. Maybe they flare up and then they get quiet again. These are the more chronic types of infections that we see. One last thing to note as we finish up our discussion of an introduction to the microbes, and that's that humans have learned through the millennia that there are lots of microbes that are capable of making things that we happen to like. And we have learned through trial and error to use microbes for these products. So when we talk about culturing microbes in the laboratory, and we'll be talking about that a lot this summer, I also want you to remember that there are industrial, commercial applications for growing microbes. And it's generally so that we can collect a product that the microbe is making. For example, fermented foods. Think about things like sourdough bread, or a nice Greek yogurt, dill pickles, balsamic vinegar, a nice wine, or a soy sauce. These are all products that we consume every day, and they are absolutely dependent upon the culturing and the growth of microbial organisms. It's the microbes, in other words, that are doing the fermenting for us. We also use microbes industrially to create energy sources for us. And I don't mean for us, for our bodies. I mean for our homes and for our cars and so on. When you go to purchase gas, when you're at the pump the next time, look at the stickers on the side of the pump, and they will tell you how much of the gasoline that you're buying for your car is composed of ethanol. Ethanol is a product that's produced through microbial metabolism. We use things like corn, and we use other plant materials like switchgrass, and the microbes that grow on those plants to produce the ethanol that we then use in our gasoline. Finally, microbes play a really important role in terms of cleaning up the messes that humans sometimes make in the environment. There is a process that's referred to as bioremediation, and all that term means is using a living thing, using a microbe, for example, to remediate or repair or clean up a toxic spill, for example, or other types of environmental pollution. And in fact, there are now industrially produced microbes that are used to clean up environmental wastes. There are microbes that are applied, for example, to oil spills now. When there is a significant discharge of crude oil, say in a waterway, one of the ways that we clean that oil up now is we spray the surface of the oil slick with microbes. Microbes that happen to be able to metabolize crude oil. We've used microbes to clean up other types of toxic chemicals that sometimes get spilled in our environment. So, yes, microbes play a really important role in human health, but they also play an important role in industry and the commercial production of things that we humans like to use.